Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Let's come straight back to the conversation of those measures that are coming in the early hours of tomorrow morning and bring into our conversation Health Minister Ed Argar, who joins me now. Thank you for coming on. Just one thing perhaps you can clarify. One of my callers phoned in to point out that actually the law to allow the government to tell us to wear masks expired last summer. Will there be a parliamentary process then, so it'll go effectively back on the statute book, Minister? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Nice to see you. So what will happen is that this is something that will be done by a parliamentary process called statutory instrument that allows the Secretary of State to make that law, and then within 28 days it needs to be debated and voted on in Parliament, and that's a standard parliamentary process.
So that goes through today, does it? That takes place today?
So he will, my understanding is he will approve that or sign that today, and then in the coming weeks there will be the opportunity to debate and vote on that.
So we know what measures are coming back. Some people are surprised social distancing not as yet returning. Why might that be?
Well, I think what we've sought to do here, Nick, is come up with a proportionate and measured response to a new variant, which we don't yet understand. I'm hopeful that actually when the scientists have done their work over the coming weeks, hopefully it will not prove to be more dangerous or vaccine resistant, but we've got to give them time to do that work. And what this does is it puts in place swiftly a proportionate and balanced set of measures to slow down the seeding and the spread of this. We think that the mask wearing injunctions now on public transport and in shops, coupled with the measures at the border, are the right and measured approach to doing this, just to buy us that time to understand this new variant, which, as I say, I don't know, but I hope it may prove not to be as concerning as it first appears.
But what are the fears? Why is the government moving so quickly?
So South Africa was exemplary in when it did its genomic sequencing on Tuesday, told us on Thursday we move very fast. The challenge with this new variant is that I think it's got around 50 mutations from the original variant, of which 32 are to the spike protein. That's the bit of the virus that connects to human cells, allows it to infect. So on that basis, you'd look at it and you'd think that with those changes, that it's become more effective in that space, it may be a lot more transmissible. But we don't know yet, and therefore we don't want to risk the progress we've made with our vaccine programme and everything that people have done over the past year and a half. So we're just buying ourselves a bit of time to understand how this new variant works.
You won't be surprised at this question. Is Christmas safe?
Well, Nick, I think when I was last on with you around a month ago, you asked if you would be able to take your team out for a decent lunch.
Yes,
at Christmas, and I said, well, that's what I was planning to do. And all I will say is I'm still planning and looking forward to seeing friends and family over Christmas. But what we're doing now is hopefully what will help make that possible. So I'm still planning on that basis. The other thing I would say to people is when you're eligible, get your booster, because that's still a hugely important part of beating this virus.
When will we know whether Omicron is as fearful as we are possibly expecting it to be? How long will the process take, or is that the piece of string question, Minister?
It's a little bit, but actually my understanding from the scientists and others is that they would hope to have much greater understanding within the next couple of weeks or so. So we've got the review date for these changes in 3 weeks. That should give enough time to have a better understanding. Now, only over time will you get the depth of understanding that comes from real-world transmission, real-world data, but I think they should, within a few weeks, have a better understanding of how it reacts, certainly to the vaccine.
What might it mean for schools? There are concerns that you might have seen in one of the newspapers today that we might go back to those isolation rules that were required at the height of I'm not suggesting we're out of the pandemic, by the way, but at the very peak of the pandemic. Are they set to return, Minister?
Well, I did see that story. After many appearances on your show, I've been well trained in making sure I've read the papers before I come on your programme, because I suspect normally something from them appears in your questioning.
You might want to share that with some of your other colleagues then, but do go on.
I don't see any reason to anticipate any return to so-called bubbles or anything like that. What we've done in schools is recommended or strongly advised that mask wearing from year 7 upwards in communal places when moving around the schools takes place. I think that's a measured and sensible precautionary step just to help, again, slow down any risk of transmission in those younger age groups.
And the other headline then, Minister, booster for all over 18s. Do you recognise that? Is that on?
Well, we will wait and see. The Secretary of State asked the JCVI, Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations, to give him urgent advice on that. I understand they've looked at that. Other things that it's been suggested they look at is the gap. I don't know what they will recommend, but I understand we expect their advice imminently, hopefully today, on that. And of course, we'll look at that very carefully. But yes, Sajid Javid asked them to do this work very rapidly to see if that would again help keep pushing back against this virus.
Given what you and your colleagues want to bring in as of 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, what are the optics like? It was just a few weeks ago that the Prime Minister was photographed in a hospital and also on a train not wearing a mask. That's not a good look, is it, Minister?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister, when these measures come in from 4 a.m., you're right, will follow the law. He will obey the law. I would expect everyone to obey the law, because it will be the law that in shops and on public transport people wear masks. Right. And I would expect him, just like any one of the rest of us, to do that.
Not quite the question, because I just refer you back to that photograph in the hospital and on the train. It was not a good look, was it, Minister? If he's asking us all to keep those masks on, particularly on public transport, by the way, surely it behoves him to wear them at all times.
I think it's important that all of us, as we go about our business, are conscious, particularly those of us in the public eye, do our best not only to do what we have to do, which is follow the law, but to be mindful of what we're doing and how that looks and how that meshes with the messages we're putting out.
Well, let's hope we can talk in 3 weeks' time and say that while these measures were necessary, we've nipped it in the bud. Let's look forward to that day. Thank you very much indeed, Health Minister Ed Argar. Appearing here on LBC, where at 8 o'clock, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From